This week's question for Nutrition Science Bites comes from one of our listeners, and the question they've asked is, should I eat breakfast or not?
That's a great topic. I've got lots of questions on that.
Yeah, well, it actually made me go and have a look at the research, and the question's super timely because there have been quite a few reviews of the research studies published in the last 12 months. And believe it or not, on all different aspects of research. So I must admit, I went thinking, well, what more is there to know about breakfast? But what these reviews do is if you go back and do an updated review, they go, oh, what studies have been done since we knew the last information about breakfast? And so in the main review, it actually covered, believe it or not, 66 studies published in Nutrition Research only in September this year. So that's why it's perfect timing. And this review spans 15 years of recent research. So it's absolutely huge. And I was, a bit taken aback as to just how many studies have been done. And the first one was around like appetite hormones. And if you think about it, kind of makes sense probably to look at appetite hormones because the origin of the word breakfast is breaking the overnight fast. So if you're fasting, you're really hoping that your appetite hormones go down. But what it shows that in breakfast skippers, there's more likely to be appetite hormone dysregulation. And if you sometimes skip breakfast, sometimes you don't, it's a bit more like then your morning appetite hormones are a bit more roller coastering because of that variation of whether you eat or not. So normally when you eat anything, you get a short increase in appetite hormones and satiety hormones. But what happens if you don't eat is those hormones, you won't get the post-eating satisfaction hormone coming up. That's a little bit complex, but it actually explains then why people who skip breakfast are more susceptible to gaining body weight.
There's quite a few things to unpack there, isn't there?
There really is. And that was only one of the aspects looked at. And the next one was the microbiome. And
Mhm.
what it showed is that people who skip breakfast have less microbial diversity and more likely to have the microbes or the microbiome composition that promotes inflammation. This is a new concept for people because I think for many years we kind of thought the colon, the large part of your last bowel, didn't really do a lot except, recover any last bits of nutrients and then provide fiber to keep you regular. But what we know is that those microbiota, that's the broad term for the bugs that live there, they actually do produce some chemicals, if you like. And what they produce depends on the food supply, like the types of fiber that get down to the colon. And different species, different bugs like different types of dietary fiber. Makes sense. We all like different food for breakfast or different food for dinner. So depending on what's there or not there is what allows bugs to grow. So when you don't really have very much fiber, and breakfast is typically a really high fiber source or an opportunity to boost your fiber intake, the sorts of bugs that favors then are ones that produce these inflammatory compounds. So that made complete sense to me. But the other concern about this then broader level of inflammation in your body is that contributes to cancer cell dysregulation. Now, another surprise for people might be that the cells in your body, they mutate all the time. And and our body can actually repair those. So that's a little bit like if you think about, your house, people come and go through their house, you get little chips and dents in the plaster on your walls, you get scratches on the floor. And if they're not that great, you can fix those if they bother you. Well, your body is constantly doing that. As every cell reproduces and copies over the DNA from the cell that's dying and replacing it, you get little tiny mistakes made or little like dents and scratches. But our body has DNA repair mechanisms. But if you have a high level of background inflammation, and we've talked many times about background inflammation is kind of like the tennis ball machine firing off free radicals that are putting those dents and scratches into your DNA. If you've got a high level of inflammation, you're making that really hard for your body to keep up. Just like the poor person at the end of the tennis ball machine, the faster you make it, the harder it is for them to go, no, I can't hit those tennis balls or grab those tennis balls. So that's the same thing that really makes sense. But the other interesting area this review covered was your brain function. So people who skip breakfast are more at risk of having a decline in their brain function. The fancy word for that is cognitive decline, but they're also more at risk of things like depression. And the challenge with depression is that's both a chicken and an egg. If you're not feeling great, you don't want to eat. But if you don't eat, your brain's not getting the fuel to help you make decisions. And it also not getting the fuel to help you perform. So this review also commented on like athletic performance. That kind of makes sense. Imagine trying to do like a high jump or the pole vault and you got no fuel to get you over the bar. I think we all kind of get that, or trying to run a 100-meter race or even just run for the bus, but you're actually out of fuel. So chances are you're not going to perform as well.
So you're going really fast for me today, Claire. There's a lot there that I'm trying
Yep.
to trying to catch up on. So
Okay. Let's break it down.
let's break it down. So the hunger hormone.
Yep.
Sometimes I eat breakfast and I feel hungry quite early.
Yep.
If I don't eat breakfast, then sometimes I don't feel hungry until later in the day. So
Okay, well let's
explain that
let's
to me.
break that down. So if you just keep on fasting, let's say you
Mm-hmm.
wake up in the morning, you don't feel hungry, you don't eat, and you actually don't eat all day,
Mm,
apart from feeling yucky, once your body switches, like it's run, there's nothing in your store box, in your
yeah.
petrol tank. Then once your body starts to just burn body fat, then you actually naturally start suppressing your own appetite. It usually takes a while to run out of, it can take days really to run out of all of the energy that's stored in your muscles and your liver. That's your main backup. And
Mhm.
that store is called glycogen. You tend to use up the glycogen stored in your muscles first, which kind of makes sense. Your muscles are working. You're going to use up what's stored near the muscles first. But then you'll use up the glycogen that's actually stored in your liver. And it's just a storage form of glucose, which is a carbohydrate. So you can kind of tell when you're producing ketones. If you got like a furry mouth and an acetone nail polish smelling breath, then you're producing ketones. They've been really useful to us as the human race because when you're producing ketones, you do not feel hungry. They inhibit your appetite. And historically, as hunter gatherers, we really, really need that because poor old caveman, he and she, they did not know if they were going to find food that day. So if when you feel really hungry or you're out of fuel, you just go and roll up in the corner and try and sleep it off, well, you're really going to starve to death, aren't you? So
Mm,
poor old caveman needed a way of keep on going to look for food without that distraction of feeling hungry. And that's how our body evolved to this switch where it could switch into body fat and tap into those stores to keep you going. So I would say for modern people, that's more of that yucky feeling. I don't know what I want. Like I know I haven't eaten, so I should be hungry. I don't necessarily feel super hungry. Um, so that's kind of that tricky stage then where you might also make the wrong decision about a healthy food.
okay.
Okay,
Right.
so that's you've totally skipped breakfast and now it's like 12, 14 hours since you've eaten. But when you eat, you normally get a surge in appetite suppressing hormones. The biggest one that surges straight away is called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide. Now, its effect only lasts a couple of minutes. It's a short acting. And those are medications we keep hearing about,
Mm,
Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy. They actually extend the life of the GLP so that you don't feel don't feel hungry. And then there are a range of other hormones that affect at different time periods in your appetite, leptin, ghrelin, that help us feel satisfied after eating. Because imagine that if we never got any chemical messages back to our brain that now you've eaten something, we'd just keep on eating.
So how long does the natural GLP-1 last in your system?
Oh, it's only like a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
That's
right.
why you need things like ghrelin to tell you that you're satisfied. Your body has a really complex appetite hormone play, and that would make a whole great separate podcast.
Mm.
So I can track down someone who's an appetite hormone specialist. So yeah, so that was the first part of your
Okay,
question. What
it
about
was.
satisfaction?
Satisfaction, yeah, yep.
So what was the next bit? What was the next question you asked me?
Um, so it was when I don't eat, I don't feel hungry. When I do eat, sometimes I do feel hungry quite
Oh, right.
quickly.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. So now this matters about what you eat for breakfast.
Yeah.
So when you eat, there is that hormone response, but there's also a digestive response. So how fast your body can digest what you eat for breakfast
Mhm.
determines how quickly your blood sugar starts to rise
Mhm.
and for how long, depending on when it finishes digesting that food. So if you think about it, if you ate fairy floss for breakfast, which is just sugar, 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 your blood sugar would go boom through the roof, and
Yep.
then there'd be nothing left within like 45 minutes, 1 hour. You get when your blood sugar goes up, your pancreas goes, I see you, glucose appearing in the blood, sends out insulin, which is like a big fuel tanker truck. It comes along in your blood, it gets the glucose on board, and it says, I know where you're needed to get this body and brain working. And it carts off the blood sugar to the muscles and to the brain so that it gets to the spots where it needs to be to keep your body going. So if you've got a really rapidly digestible carbohydrate that you've had in your breakfast cereal, like high sugar content,
Mhm.
then that happens over and done, dusted, everybody's, back to usual duties. But if you have a really slowly digesting carbohydrate, your body doesn't just send out an army of trucks. It goes, oh yeah, there's a little bit of a rise in glucose. I'll just send out one truck that should take care of it. And then it keeps just sending out one truck, then another insulin truck, then another insulin truck, not the whole fleet. And
So
then
the
they're
whole
all,
fleet comes out when you have like a sugary cereal or something
yep.
like that, not so much toast and beans or oats or.
That's exactly right. So if you have a slower digesting carbohydrate, one of the ways historically we've talked about how slow they take to digest
Mhm.
is glycemic index. So a glycemic index is a carbohydrate that can be chopped up, converted into glucose really fast, and be taken out of your bloodstream really fast. Whereas a low glycemic index carbohydrate, like rolled oats, like corn, like any whole grain toast, you can see the little nutty
Mhm.
grains in them. They're a bit they're slower to digest. So your body goes, right, well, I can just deploy one at a time till I see how many you need, rather than, oh no, look at that. Look at that huge spike in glucose. Must take care of that straight away. And yeah, like the whole fleet's coming.
What
So if
what
you've
about
got the slow process, that's why you
yeah.
then feel fuller for longer. And Ilyse, I honestly notice that if I have rolled oats for breakfast, I don't feel so hungry compared to, an easier to digest type of cereal that's
Mm.
more likely to, not have whole grains in it.
Mm. So I'm
It's
just
interesting.
thinking because, yeah, like I've been having toast with baked beans the last few mornings, and that's really been getting me through until lunchtime without. I have a coffee as well, so that's got the milk, so it's a bit heavier, but I don't feel like the snack. But I find when I do have rolled oats that I am hungry by about 10:30. So
Oh, wow.
it's just
Maybe I
interesting.
eat more of
It's
them than
just
you.
yeah, I don't know, it's just interesting. But Claire, what about if you were to have it in a smoothie? Like, does it matter how it comes? Like, if I'm not chewing it, if all that work's done for me, if I've got oats in a smoothie with a banana, some blueberries, and some peanut butter, is that gonna give me the same full feeling or not?
Well, that it will be digested a little bit faster
Mm,
because you've already done some of the work of the
yeah.
stomach. the acid in the stomach, its job is to try and mulch that food up into teeny weeny portions called boluses that
Mm,
get released from your stomach into your small intestine, which is called the duodenum.
mm,
Most of that digestive activity happens in the duodenum. So if you've mulched it all up in a smoothie, you've done a little bit of that work, so it can be released faster.
mm,
Plus, the milk will be digested a bit faster if you've got some fruit or something in there
mm.
as well. That's going to be
Okay.
digested a bit faster. But if you made overnight oats where you've soaked them, that'll give you that same, like, the cold, smoother, creamier, fruitier sort of taste. So maybe you can try that next time. Add some chia seeds, which
Yep.
actually are slower to digest and a great source of fiber as well.
Okay. Excellent. So then moving on, you were talking about cognitive decline.
Yeah.
So, is that like an immediate thing? So if I don't have breakfast, my brain's not going to work
There is
properly.
some evidence for, like, let's say you were doing an exam and
Mm-hmm.
you've got to, especially like add up numbers or remember things short term,
Yeah.
there'll be that sort of short term effect. But
Mm-hmm.
the other evidence is around cognitive decline associated with aging, like just not being, your brain not staying as sharp over
Okay.
time. So it's more to do with that. But before we go on to talk about those other aspects, I think it's worth looking at, well, does it actually matter, like for your health? And so the way you do that is you have to do one of those cohort studies, where you follow people up for 6 years, you follow them up for 10 years, you follow up 15 years or longer. So in those, I had a look and I found another review where it actually asked the question is whether or not it actually mattered for heart health. And this time there were, what did I tell you how many RCTs there were in that one? There was actually 11 studies. And what they showed was that um, people who skipped breakfast were less likely to gain weight, but were more likely to have high cholesterol. So,
Mm-hmm.
and this was in experiments this time. This was a combination of experiments as well as the observational studies. So I'll tell you about the experiments first. So in the RCTs, that's where they went, you're not getting breakfast and you're getting breakfast. That's where they found if they controlled everything, then the people who skipped breakfast, they didn't let them eat breakfast, were more likely to lose weight, but their cholesterol went up. Then in the studies where they followed them over time, this one is really interesting. So this one now was systematic reviews and meta-analyses. So this is where they um, did the cohorts. So there was 9 cohort studies, nearly 250,000 people, and what they found that the people, they categorized them into breakfast skippers, sometimes breakfast, always eat breakfast, compared to the regular breakfast eaters, you were 27% more likely to die from anything if you never eat breakfast. So that's, whoa, go, wow. Now, there can
So,
be other reasons for that. You never eat breakfast because you can't afford, you haven't got food, so that can contribute. But they also found they were 28% more likely to die from heart disease, 34% more likely to die from a type of cancer. So what they concluded in that, like they said, look, don't forget, they're of course confounders. We've adjusted for socioeconomic status, like whether people have got money for food, all of those things. But their conclusion was that the nutrients that you get from eating breakfast foods are important. So the dietary fibers, the what are called antioxidant nutrients, and the plant nutrients, there's things like polyphenols or phytonutrients. They're really good at neutralizing those free radicals in the presence of that inflammation. So
so are you saying then, Claire, that breakfast is the most important meal of the day?
no,
Or
I'm not
no?
saying that. I'm telling
Okay.
you about the research, but I'll tell you my theory on how you can explain that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the challenge for people is if you skip breakfast, most people, if they skip breakfast, they skip those nutrients. So if people aren't a morning person and they don't feel like breakfast, they can't face it first thing in the morning, it's about, can you have those breakfast foods, things that are high in whole grains in particular, and um, things that are good sources of calcium. Can you have those somewhere else in the day? Can you put breakfast? Can you make overnight oats and put it in your lunchbox so that you're still having it? Can you have toast? Have you got, a toaster when you get to work? Can you leave any breakfast foods at work? Or can you even have breakfast food for a snack? Because let's say you woke up in the morning, you didn't have time for breakfast, you had to sprint for the bus, you've made it to work, you've now had no breakfast, you've got no lunch. Let's say it's 10 o'clock. What are you most likely to have? Do you think people are likely to go to the work canteen or to the shop next door and say, "Excuse me, could I have some Wheat Bix or could I have some rolled oats?" I don't think my observation is that that's actually not normally what people order when they go out.
Mm,
And if
okay.
you've only got a vending machine at work, it is no way is it gonna it's not very likely that it's actually got, you know,
No,
um,
you might get
porridge
a
or
protein bar or one of those cakey type muesli bars, but
if you're
yeah,
lucky.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So now another interesting review, like I was telling you, I couldn't believe how many reviews have been done. So in the last year, there's been a review on migraines and meal skipping,
Mhm,
and breakfast skipping is associated with a higher risk of migraine. And the reason for that is because you're more at risk if you're a migraineur, so a person who gets lots of migraines, when your blood sugar goes low or is low for a sustained period, for some people that triggers the onset of a migraine, and so breakfast skippers are more likely to get more migraines. What else? What other questions have you got on there?
well, I wanna know what is a balanced breakfast on a budget then?
On a budget, well, like honestly, one of the cheapest thing is rolled oats.
Mm,
You can still get about a kilo for around $4 when you're getting the own brand. So if you want to make that a muesli, then if you buy nuts, seeds, whatever you want to put in there, then
mhm,
that makes a really easy breakfast. And whether you're having that with cow's milk or a plant-based milk, on No Money No Time, we've got a stack of recipes for different versions of overnight oats, but you can really do that any way you like. You can just soak your oats in yogurt, in muesli, grate an apple, add sultanas, take a banana to add that in there, put berries in there, whatever you like. That is really about one of the cheapest breakfasts. You can have it as porridge. What you're having, baked beans on toast.
mm,
And if you want to add even more veggies to that, you can throw some cherry tomatoes on top as well, and then start taking off some of those 5 serves of veg that, we're aiming to get in a day. Breakfast doesn't have to be fancy. It
mhm,
seems like the key thing is that people who eat breakfast have higher fiber intakes, the healthier gut microbiome, the lower levels of inflammation. So it's like helping your body get off to a good start so it can protect itself from these metabolic processes like inflammation through the whole day. So
mm,
don't worry about it being fancy. Focus more on planning ahead to have
yeah,
something. The other interesting review I came across was the and this was cohort studies and it looked at the association with depression. And this time there were, let me tell you how many. There were 12 studies, and the incidence of depression, so the chance of developing depression if you never eat breakfast, of having depression was about over 80% greater compared to breakfast eaters. But I do think, because this is an observational study, this is a really good example of, what you call the chicken and the egg. If you've got depression, you may not feel motivated to have breakfast, or sometimes medications can actually make you not feel that great in the morning. So this is a case where having it later in the day
mm,
when you do feel like eating, but to have it later in the day if you're working really means about putting it in your lunchbox the
mm,
the night before, or taking a stash of breakfast foods and leaving them in your locker, or if you've got a work kitchen, leaving them there. You can take long life milk. You can get long life cow milk, plant milk. You can get a range of milks, and as a minimum, that's pretty cheap and an easier thing to do. One thing I keep in my filing cabinet for snacks is I keep a box of like high fiber porridge sachets.
Mm.
So if I just have an extra hungry day, it's unusual for me. It would be very unusual for me because I pack my lunchbox the night before and I like to eat my breakfast I feel like when I get to work. So that's one way that I've also got a snack stash by leaving it in the work, and I leave long life milk there too. But people will work out what works for them. I think you can get little cans of baked beans as well.
We went away for the weekend and we stayed in a hotel, like a serviced apartment type one, rather one that didn't have a restaurant, though we had to leave really early in the morning as well. So I just threw in some of those porridge sachets.
Yep.
So and that was really quick just to stick them in the microwave in the hotel room, and we had something to eat before we left. So that worked really well. Claire, what are your thoughts on like the meal replacement poppers, like the like up and go
Well, the main
sausagen type?
problem with a drink for breakfast, some of those do have dietary fibers added into them. But, we've talked before about chewing and brain
Mm.
function. If you just drink your breakfast rather than eat your breakfast, there's nothing chewy added into there. Like, you mentioned, even if you blitz up the rolled oats, you're still going to have to chew them a bit. So the active chewing boosts the blood flow to your brain as well, which means those nutrients are getting into your blood, and that blood is going around your brain more. So try to have something chewy as well if your preferred breakfast is a drink, or leave some, you know, put a spoon of extra oats into it so that you can eat them with a spoon once you get to the bottom of it. I'll just tell you one other way to boost your grain diversity, because this is a goal that we ask people. They can set a goal
Mm.
on diversifying their grains in the healthy eating quiz, and it's one that really, sometimes you're scratching your head. How can I get more grains in? So I discovered in one of the supermarket chains, in the porridge section, they have a product, and you go, oh, that's an interesting looking rolled oats. It's not oats at all. It's 5 other grains that have been rolled to look like rolled oats. So
Oh.
when I make my porridge, or I add a spoon of this 5 grain mix, and they're all much harder than rolled oats, so you have to still end up chewing them even if you make a porridge. But I also add that to my muesli. So I'm not just getting rolled oats as my grain. I'm now getting these 5 grains, and I'm pretty sure my microbiome's pretty happy about that, actually.
What would those 5 grains be? Can you remember?
There's rye, I think there's rolled quinoa. I'll have to go and check. There's definitely rye, but they're unusual grains. There might have been rolled freekeh as well. They've got
Oh.
some really weird names. If if you've got one of those shops, like a Whole Foods type shop where they sell weird grains, I think rolled barley was another one.
Mhm.
Um, Go and have a look at all the different ones. Most of them take longer to cook because they're harder than rolled oats. When you look at them and when you cook them, you go, oh, yeah, this is why these aren't so popular, because they take longer to cook. But with those, if you soak them, they will cook up faster than if you just, boiling them and you're going, oh, great, twice as long to
You don't have
cook.
to do that with the 5 grains that you're putting in that porridge
No,
though,
I
do
no,
you?
I add
You
them in.
just
I
add.
add them in raw.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to tell you about these other. I was really surprised there was 3 other reviews, and they were reviews not on breakfast broadly. They were specifically on breakfast cereals that come in a box, and
Mhm.
they call these ready-to-eat cereals. And this time there actually was some RCTs, randomized controlled trials, where they experimented. They made people their laboratory rats and said, "You lot are being given the breakfast we want you to eat," and the other people weren't given ready to eat cereal. They were given something else. Or actually, I'm telling a lie. I think they were told to eat ready to eat cereals mostly, or they were told not to eat ready to eat cereals, just go and eat whatever. So, what's interesting, the people who ate ready to eat cereal for breakfast rather than have whatever you want, you just cannot have ready to eat cereal. The ones eating the boxed cereals actually had higher nutrient intakes. And that kind of makes sense because if you're told, oh, you can't have ready to eat cereal, what are you going to have? Well, maybe you're going to have white toast. Maybe you're going to have, I don't know, maybe I don't know what else you'd have. Maybe you've just had an egg or you've had a muffiny thing. But in these with ready to eat cereal, higher nutrient intake, and then in observational studies, lower risk of dying from things, including dying from cancer. So that's consistent with the
Mm.
breakfast broadly. And they were more likely to have a higher whole grain intake and lower risk of developing type 2
Okay.
diabetes.
So I think you need to step it back a moment. So
Okay.
ready to eat boxed cereal.
Ready to eat cereals means you just got to pour it in
Yeah.
your bowl and you're
But are we
ready to go.
talking, well, but that can't be like your chocolate rice bubble type stuff though, can it?
Well, because this is a review of a whole range of studies, you then would have to go into every study and draw
Mm.
them out. But here's an interesting thing, Ilyse. Even some of those breakfast cereals that do not have many stars,
Hmm.
they have micronutrients added to them. They have B vitamins. They typically have iron added to them, folate. So if you eat that compared to eating white bread, you probably still have a higher nutrient intake. So here's the dilemma. What's the hierarchy of eating breakfast? Obviously, if, you're goody two shoes, then your breakfast is going to be high in whole grains. It's going to be unprocessed.
Yeah.
But the next choice then in the ready to eat cereals is to look for the ones with the most health stars. So the ones with most health stars, not only will they have nutrients like those vitamins and minerals I just mentioned added to them, but they're less likely to have added sugar. They're less likely to be high in salt and more likely to have a higher fiber intake. If your breakfast cereal has 2 stars or 2 or 3 stars, it's going to have more added fat, sugar, salt, and likely to be much lower in fiber. So, as a
We call
parent,
that holiday cereal, Claire.
yeah, or
Yep.
birthday cereal.
Yep.
Look, when I was a kid, we got Fruit Loops on Christmas Day.
Yep.
So they're like, yeah, think of them as lollies, basically as treat foods.
Yep.
But for the everyday to fuel brains and bodies, then the more health stars, the presence of higher amounts of dietary fiber, and ideally, it might say whole grains. The reason why it's not going to be jumping out whole grain, whole grain, whole grain is because there's no requirement to put whole grains. So that's up to if you're a manufacturer who's going out of your way to make something whole grain, you're going to tell your customers
Yeah.
that. But in
Yes.
general,
Mhm.
they will also have more health stars.
Okay. All right. So, Claire, I want to know, when you go out for breakfast, what
Yep.
is your pick?
Well, first up, I never go out for breakfast because I can eat that at home, and I like having porridge in winter and, have Weet-Bix with muesli on top in summer. But this is what I'll tell you what I've noticed. Let's say I'm staying at a hotel and woohoo, breakfast is included. I go straight for the bircher muesli, the fruit that someone else has cut up, and have yogurt. And then if I'm still hungry after that, I go, have they made mushrooms?
Yes. Yep.
Under those
Mm.
lids, is there mushrooms? And then for me, I'm going, mushrooms, tomatoes. Oh, woohoo. I'll have a spoon of baked beans. Maybe I have a little bit of scrambled egg. And I'm probably full then, but if I still wanted more to eat, I'd probably be putting that on a whole grain toast. So I'm different from everyone else. Like I look at people and people eating lots of processed meat at breakfast and I go, because my family does have a higher risk of bowel cancer, I go, why would I do that to myself?
Mm,
Why would I throw myself under a bus when my family's at high risk for
mm.
colon cancer? So I think I'm not the good person to ask that. So let me ask you, what do you have
I
when you go out for
I
breakfast?
really do like eggs Benedict when I go out. That's a
Yeah.
bit of a treat for me. I like
Well,
poached
they're with
eggs.
spinach, aren't they?
Um, I do like it with spinach and mushrooms. You can get like
Yeah.
the smoked ham or
Yep.
yeah. Sometimes it does come with a side. I do have bacon, occasionally, but I have been listening to you, Claire. I don't have that regularly anymore. Um, but if we are cooking at home on the weekend, then I do like the French toast that we have on the website. That's really nice.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But actually, I brought this into work the other day. I think it's a good example of how you can add extra breakfast foods to your diet throughout the day. Um, I had a silicon lunchbox, and as I left for work, I chucked 2 eggs in it,
Yep.
like just eggs straight out of the fridge. I had a handful of spinach, some cherry tomatoes, and I've been buying the sliced mushrooms just because it's convenient. I know it costs a little bit more, but I did say to you in a previous episode, Claire, you actually get more mushrooms for your
Yeah.
money in the sliced. So I put all of that into this little silicone container. I came to work, I cracked the eggs into the container with everything else, put a little bit of milk in it from the office fridge, excuse me, stuck it in the microwave.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that came in and said, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Like,
You brought it from home.
I brought it
Yeah.
from
So it's
home,
heaps
and
cheaper.
it was like a gourmet lunch. So
Yeah. So I think, some of yeah, that's right. Now you've got like brunch. So
yeah,
I think, breakfast is worth thinking about because it's generally less preparation time. That sounds
mm,
like that was less preparation
yeah.
time
Well, it was
than,
4 minutes to cook, and like
yeah,
what, 30 seconds to throw all those things into the little container. So
yeah.
mm,
So breakfast is one of those things that it seems like it is getting our bodies off to a really good start. I don't think you have to be paranoid about the time.
hmm
The contribution seems to be from the dietary fibers and the chewing and the other nutrients that come packed with it. So, and what we've said, everyone's busy in the morning, so planning ahead. You
mm,
can take the same approach for school kids. Like if for some reason you've got a child who's not hungry in the morning, putting breakfast type foods into their lunchbox so that they've got something to eat there rather than just, like a fruity roll up that's going to stick to their teeth. I know for some families, kids are eating breakfast, in the car. Like you got to do what works for when your kids are most awake. Just one other thing from some of the studies, this is more not around breakfast specifically, but if you're eating until late the night before, then you actually haven't had the overnight fast. So that's another reason why people may not feel hungry. So that's just one other practical thing to check. Shut the kitchen down earlier in the evening,
mm,
and then you'll probably notice that everyone starts waking up in the morning and feels more like eating something.
mm.
So I think we've covered off a lot. I'm not going to say breakfast is the most important of the day. I think it's that the breakfast foods are a really important way to boost your nutrient and help your body stay on your side when it comes to help you feeling better, thinking better, and protecting you from all those nasties that we always talk about.
Yeah. Well, I think we covered a lot more than what we anticipated. So
And we've already got one article on No Money, No Time about 5 easy ways to approach breakfast. We'll add a summary of this about, should you or shouldn't you eat breakfast? And then we've got so many breakfast recipes, haven't we, Ilyse, on
we
No Money,
do,
No
we do.
Time?
We've got heaps. But if you think that there is something that you have for breakfast that is not on the website that you would like to send in and share with us, we would love to see it and give it any NMNT makeover required. So
Yeah, and we'll name it after people.
we will.
If that breakfast recipe makes it to the website, and we'll apply our nutrient magic to adjust it so it meets our nutrient criteria. Well, good to
Wonderful.
chat as usual, Elise.
Likewise. Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.